Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations with Near at Home Facilitators. We've decided to record some of our Friday afternoon community practice conversations to share with you all through our website because we love going deep into topics that are related to near at home. And I've been getting email requests to share some of our conversations. So we're going to talk about some stuff today, and we hope you find this useful. I'm Quinn Zara. I'm the lead Near at Home facilitator, and joining me today are some of our other near facilitators. Carol Young is in Idaho, and Leah's in Idaho. Janine is in Alaska. Michelle is in Oregon, and I'm headquartered out of Washington State. So thanks to the near facilitators for joining this conversation. And I have a question for them that we're gonna go deep into. And my question is, we've heard home visitors struggle a little bit with the concept of therapeutic use of self. We've heard home visitors say, but I'm not a therapist, so I can't be therapeutic. I don't know what this use of self is. That's, what you do in therapy. It's not what I do as a home visitor. And yet in our Near at Home toolkit and in our facilitated learning, we talk a lot about the use of self. And one of the phrases that we use a lot is, how you are is more important than what you do. And that's a way of describing the therapeutic use of self. And so I thought it might be useful for home visitors to hear us discuss, what do we really mean when we say the use of self? And just a full disclaimer about our conversation, we're recording this Friday afternoon. We're all tired, we're all working from home. And so, it is what it is. So any thoughts on what do we mean when we say use of self or therapeutic use of self?
The first thing that always comes to mind when I think about that is that, home visiting is a relationship-based practice. And so my very most important, my essential tool is who I am and how I am. And so that's that therapeutic use of self. How I show up, how I am with families is much more impactful than information that I give them, handouts, assessments. Not that all of those things aren't an important part of home visiting, because they are, and they are useful. But it's like the delivery method is how I am as a human being, how I connect or don't connect, how I judge, how I show up, how I handle rupture and repair, because those are inevitable in home visiting in any relationship. That it's, and the difference, I always think about the difference. I always talk about the difference between therapeutic and therapy. In therapy, I have a diagnosis, a treatment plan, a goal, and I'm focused on fixing something, helping someone fix something. And therapeutic is just the process of being connected. The ocean is behind me right now, even though I am not in the ocean. I kind of wish I was in the ocean. And that's therapeutic for me, but that's not therapy. That's what popped into my brain.
One of the things that I think of is that saying, we are no different than our clients, or the families we serve. Because I think about that, even using the word therapeutic use of self, I think kind of puts it on this level of like, oh, therapeutic use of self. When really it's like how Carol said, like, it's just how I am with someone. But I think also naming that humanity, humility, like I'm no different than the families I'm working with. This idea that I have wounds just as everyone has wounds, and that those can be moments of joining in an appropriate sort of way. Not saying like we share our stories with our clients, but I think that ability to connect, that I don't know, I'm stumbling over my words with that, but just that idea of we all have wounds, we're in this together, and how I am with people is really more important than what I'm doing, and how I'm feeling, using that as professional use of self as a way to maybe join, or as an intervention, or as a portal of entry with families. That kind of infant mental health theory I think about too when you think of that. But it's funny, even like I've never really thought about, because I'll say therapeutic use of self, but even that language kind of sounds like,
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, like, oh, I'm a therapist. And when really, like, how we say it and you're at home, how we are is more important than what we do. Even that feels more joining, I think.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you used the word joining, because I was thinking of that actually as I did this introduction to our conversation. That we're showing up as our authentic selves. We're tired. I didn't look in the mirror this morning. You know, it's just, it is what it is. And that's what happens when home visitors show up at the home of the family, is that we see families as who they are in that moment, and hopefully we can also be authentic in who we are. And to use a little disclaimer, a little humor, like, okay, folks, it's Friday afternoon, I might not have much to say. That's real. And that lets people, I think, have some more permission to let themselves be real with us as home visitors. If we can model that, it's okay. Yeah, I might not know what I want to say either.
Right. And the whole, I think of that saying, children don't need a perfect parent, they need a real one, or an authentic one. And I think about that paralleling with home visiting. Yeah, when you said that. And, it's funny, I notice sometimes I tell myself, the power of showing up, how we talk about that, or Dan Siegel's book. And I think about, sometimes I tell myself, oh, that means I need to be like energized, or that I want to be there, that I'm feeling strong about it. And really, I think it's the opposite, right? That I'm going to show up even though I'm tired and I'm kind of crabby, or whatever it may be. Yeah.
I'm thinking about that. I love the like authentic was in, because that's what the word that comes to my mind, of just the authenticity of connection. And I feel like there's a big piece of it that requires a great deal of vulnerability. And not, like we've talked about before, like this performative vulnerability of I'm going to be really vulnerable, but this vulnerability of stepping into a space and having no idea what you're doing. And
Yeah.
right. And being okay with that, and sitting with this like space of discomfort and almost like fear of like, I have no idea what's going on. I have no idea what's going to happen. I'm going to ask this question. Who knows what's going to come of that. But in that, we're going to be in that space of not knowing together. And I think a lot about the idea of therapy itself is not the therapist is not fixing somebody, right? And as a therapist, the role is like, we ask questions so that people come up with their own answers, right? And it's listening, right? And so I think it's really interesting, just the weight and the power that's put on this idea of a therapist and these requirements to be a therapist, when the true value of it is that pure authentic listening and asking questions, having no idea what's going to happen, and just being able to sit with that in that space of whatever opens up, right? And just that being with of, oh, okay, we're going to go here, or, oh, wow, that totally took and caught me off guard, but we're going to sit with that, and just like, I feel like it almost it's a great deal of vulnerability on our end as the listener, to be able to access our authentic space and not put on this hat of being an expert, right? So I think it's sort of like this whole idea of who's the expert and who are we honoring, and as for a home visitor to honor the parent truly as the expert. And I think that's where sometimes it can get tricky, is when we feel like, well, I'm the expert, I need to know all these things, I need to know how to fix this person, I can do all this stuff, and then we step out of that, we step out of our use of self, because when we're truly attuning to who we are, I think on a basic level, we're all here, we have no idea what we're doing. It's just
Right.
like,
And indeed, if we go into the fixing, it changes the moment. When I think of what gives growth, what gives healing, what people remember is not the activity that you had them do, or the worksheet that you gave them, or the handout that they're supposed to read later. They remember the home visitor. They remember the home visitor that sat with them. They remember the home visitor that came in each day. They remember the home visitor that was real. It's the same with therapists, actually. That is where it is, within that connection, that all the growth, all the healing comes from.
Absolutely.
Which is our other great quote in Near at Home. And I know that the home visitors who have done Near at Home think about it all the time. Is my favorite one is, how you are is what you do. And I personally think of that. Actually, right before we did this tape, I thought of it again. I'm like, wait a second, it's okay. Whatever I say, how I am. But is Facilitators, which is that listening, asking, listening, and affirming are the profound form of doing. And when people talk about, and you talk about who really influenced you, who really changed you, from a child to an adult, it's those people that were, I think of how I felt around those people, not necessarily what they said to me, but the people that were there.
And that's attachment.
Yes, that is.
Yeah.
it's like it goes back to this whole thing of, am I good enough?
Yeah.
Right? Am I good enough to be authentic? Am I good enough that how I am, is that good enough? Right? And what are people going to think of me? I think that's really.
What's my supervisor going to think if this family cancels a visit? Or what do I tell myself when a family cancels, or they seem ambivalent?
What should I be doing? What should I be giving?
Yeah. And it's interesting. Sorry, Jeannie. I was just thinking of the parallel to parenting too, right? Like when a child's melting down, or a child maybe isn't at a certain developmental stage. Well, what do I need to be doing? And again, that kind of listening and being with, how that parallels all the way up and down.
And with yourself too, like thinking about your shark music, right? That's entering in. And it's like that attuning, you have to attune to yourself in order to attune to others.
And it's okay to not always know what you're feeling too. Right? That doesn't mean like I got myself figured out. Right? Because that's not true.
And it's okay to not know what you're doing. I mean, I think about, I've been in this field for many over 2 decades now, a long time. And I still provide direct services to families, and I still walk in homes and I think to myself, I don't know what I'm going into. I don't know what I'm doing. I mean, I know what I'm doing, but I don't know what I'm doing. Because it's just this process of discovery. And even in our day-to-day relationships, I think about with our partners and friends and family members, we feel that way sometimes. It's like it can change from moment to moment, and the power is in just being ourselves and showing up and muddling through, that we don't always need to know what to do. We need to know how to move through it, how to be. and it is vulnerable and it is scary. And that scary feeling doesn't necessarily go away.
Mm-mm.
If you're a therapist, it doesn't go away. I still feel it. It's like, okay, here we go. And then it unfolds and it develops and it grows, those relationships. And I think that's something that we've learned together. We've been working together for more than 2 years now. And, how our relationship has flowed and unfolded and grown, the comfort that we feel among each other, that process over that time.
And even thinking about, doing facilitated learning with programs, having that moment where you first go into that step 2 or 3 and you go, what do I need to be doing? And like that reminder of the magic is Janine, is Michelle, is Carol, is Gwen, is Rhonda, like that's the magic. And again, I think that goes back to Michelle's, like, am I good enough? Do you feel me? Do you see me? Do you hear me?
I love that the question started out with the therapeutic use of self, and it goes back to the self. Well, am I good enough? So like, no, are you talking about me? I can't be, I need more info. And I think like that is the home visiting. It's actually anyone in the helping profession, but definitely in the home visiting. Am I good enough? Am who I am good enough? Or is it my curriculum and my packet and all the rest? Of course. So I tell people, of course you are. And then I think, but am I good enough?
Right. Yeah, right.
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah.
And how important it is to have that.
So thinking about this use of self and being authentic and all these little threads we've been talking about, it's bringing back memories of when I was a home visitor. And some of the deepest relationships I had with clients were ones where I felt like I could bring my full self to. And I remember walking into home visits with certain clients, certain families, and some days having to say things like, if I fall asleep during this visit, it's not because of you. If I start drooling, it's really not because of you. It's because my kid kept me up all last night and I'm really tired today. And so sorry if I just sound kind of dumb, because that's where I am right now. And the generosity of those parents to accept me for, oh yeah, you're just like us. We're all struggling with whatever's going on. But I just loved how generous and accepting they were of me, because I joined them. Saying, I'm just a person. I got a struggle going on. I'll do what I can, but it is what it is.
It also makes me think of the power of reflective supervision and consultation then. So if you can have a space to show up, like, again, always thinking parallel process, but just how important that relationship is to allow you then to show up and just be who you are and know that that's accepted and good enough.
As I was thinking, Leah, when you said that, of the word collaboration, it's reflective supervision.
Right.
You gotta be reflective, you gotta be collaborative, and you gotta be regular. But that collaboration piece of having a place to show up, but that it's not me here and or me here and the supervisor here, but we're equalizing. It's really an equity kind of thing too. You're equalizing the relationship, and so it's, my expectation of myself might be that I'm supposed to have all the answers and be able to fix things. That might be my old tape playing in my head, but in reality, that's not helpful, because I don't know the other person's story. And it really is, I need the family or my partner or my friend to be able to do this kind of back and forth kind of thing for us to figure out or to think about what might be going on or just to hear it. 90% of the time, I do not need a solution from my friend or my reflective supervisor. I need someone to listen to me. When I really feel listened to, I have all kind of like, oh, I get now why that's so hard for me, because it's kind of that dance of just safety. Somebody said safety. I don't know who did, but that safe place I can be vulnerable enough to really show my authentic self and collaborate with somebody, be heard. And that's the intervention. Those are the change moments. Those have always been the change moments in my own life.
And that's back to attachment. Yeah.
Right.
Back to attachment and that dance,
Right.
which is more about what I'm bringing and how I am and not about the linear. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's really hard because that's not what's seen as valuable. Like we can say that's what's most valuable. And how are you going to write up like practice, you know, co-regulation at a home visit? And that was the outcome, right? Like that's like all these things that are seen as super, like, this is why we got into the field. This is the piece that we see as the most important. This is the intervention. And then documenting that on like a home visit record, like that's not one of the tracked outcomes, you know? So, like,
right.
As a program manager, I have no spreadsheet that says, how many times did home visit, right? You know, like I don't, I'm like, okay, how many home visits were completed? How many developmental screens were completed on time? Like it's really, and so then it's really hard to move past that. I am more than a number and I am more than my, like the material output, you know? So I think it's like this constant, like I tell home visitors sometimes, like, this is where we have to be a little bit rebellious, you know? You know, and because that stuff's not seen as the most valuable part. So it's I feel like that's tricky.
Creative writing. I mean, really, I mean, it's a push-pull when it comes to programmatic things, because you're right, Michelle. I mean, our programs don't necessarily, they don't have that piece written, and maybe that's a long-term goal we all have, right? To quantify so that that's really valued and home visitors feel supported for that. But it's really thinking about, how do I meet all my administrative responsibilities and still show up and be how I am in a way that I can authentically connect. That's the stressor that program managers and supervisors and home visitors, that we all feel.
It makes me think when I was a beginning therapist, we used to be able to, and on my notes, it was almost always on there, which is working on the relationship or strengthening the relationship, right? That would be on your notes. And a lot of times that would be the main thing on the notes. And then there hit a particular time when, due to whatever rules, that wasn't allowed on the notes anymore. It's like, quit that. And I see that with everything. It's like, no, what did you do? What did you give? What did you offer? And to lose sight of what the essence is. Yeah.
So it does make me think that home visitors share a parallel process with parents, and that as home visitors, we want parents to read to their child and do all these great interactions and all this, but they also have to do the laundry, pay the bills, cook the food, clean the house.
Yeah.
You know, it's like they've got to do these things, but we also want them to have a nice, healthy relationship, and they juggle all that.
Yeah.
It makes me think too about the theory of change, because I think, you know, like just how top down is, what is the administration's focus? And it makes me think this idea of infiltrating systems, because I do think there's a way you can be reflective about paperwork, right? And it makes me think too, Quinn, just being a parent, like there are the things we have to do, right? And there's also ways to do them that are engaged too with our kids, or not when we don't want to be. But I don't know, maybe that's a big pie in the sky. Reflective systems. Yeah.
I like the vision.
Mhm.
Well, I think we're going to have to wrap up our conversation, but I just want to leave my favorite words of comfort, or my favorite notion of comfort around this use of self and the dilemma of doing or being, and that's based on Edtronic's research on match and mismatch in relationships.
Mm.
That 40% match is really ideal.
Mhm.
Not 90%, not 100%,
Mm.
not ideal. It's really less than half of the time the mismatch is ideal. And of course, it's the repair. So when we show up and we're too focused on what we need to do and not how to be, we all will have an opportunity to repair that. And that's where the relationship grows. So both as a parent and as a home visitor, Tronic's research has been so helpful for me to know, like, okay, good enough.
Yeah.
I can aim for the 50% mark and really, like, I'm good enough.
Mhm.
So thank you all for just ad-libbing with me and going deep into this conversation about the use of self and what that means within our near-at-home practice and for home visitors. And we'll be doing this again. So thank you all at home. Bye.
Bye.